Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about loops. So basically, there's been a lot of discussion on the use of pairs and iPairs recently, and people saying you shouldn't use it anymore. Um, but I was wondering, should you really not use it? Like, should pairs and iPairs no longer exist? You just use nothing, right? Generalized iteration, which I'll explain what that is. Should Roblox deprecate it? What's fastest as well? So that's what we're going to talk about today. But for starters, let's go through the types of loops, at least that are generally used. So as you can see here, right? I actually forgot to do this in recent videos, or just realized I should be doing this. So I'm going to zoom in so y'all can see better. But we have pairs, iPairs, generalized iteration, and numeric. So if you're even just, an intermediate or amateur scripter, you've probably heard of like pairs and iPairs. You've probably seen the others too, but might not know it by these terms, and I'm gonna go through it. So of course, pairs. Let's say we have a table, right? Local data, and then pairs would just be for IV in pairs data do, right? And then you can of course print the index and the value. That's what I and V stand for, by the way. You probably see this all the time. I is index, V is value. And what I mean by that is if we put a value in this table, um, 1, right? This number is the index, and then this string is the value. So if we print this, right, let's just put 2 as well, why not? If we print this, of course, it prints 1, 1, 2, 2, right? It prints the index and the value. So that's pairs. Now, iPairs. It's very similar, except of course you use iPairs instead of pairs, obviously. And then if we print that, it'll be the same thing, of course. But the difference with iPairs is it makes sure that whatever's in the table, it is in order of index. So it won't work with strings. So like if I made the index a string of like 1, and then let's make the value the number, let's switch it around. Um right, if we do this and then we test, as you can see, nothing happened, right? Because iPairs goes through ordered indexes. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like we had before, right? Um, because it takes an array, and if you don't know what an array is, it's essentially the numbered index. So a table where everything is numbered in order, 1, 2, 3, etc. Right? It doesn't have the indexes out of order. It doesn't have strings as the indexes or anything else, right? It is just numbered in order. That is an array, and that's what iPairs will take, and iPairs will make sure that it's in the correct order every single time. Anyways, so that's iPairs, right? Now we have generalized iteration. I'm gonna change this back, right? Just needed that for the explanation of iPairs and versus pairs. But if we change this back, right? Generalized iteration, it's the same type of thing, except you don't use pairs or iPairs. You don't use a function, you just put the table in. So this is actually introduced, I believe 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, by Roblox. They introduced generalized iteration, no longer having to use pairs or iPairs. Roblox just handles it themselves, right? They'll automatically kind of detect and make sure, it's proper. So of course, again, we can print I and V, test, you can see 1, 1, 2, 2, right? So that's generalized iteration. Finally, the last type of loop we're going to be talking about, which is numeric. So you've probably seen these or used these. It's essentially just a loop from one number to the next. So it goes for I equals 1, 5, do, print I, right? This is basically just counting up from 1 to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we test, in fact, I accidentally just clicked that. Oh my gosh. Okay, if we test, you can see down here in the output, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what numeric loops are. It is just printing 1 through 5 and setting I as the current number it's on, right? So there's the summary of the 4 types of loops. Now we'll get into what is the best loop to use. So to test this, we want to get the speed actually of these loops. We want to see what's like best for optimization, you know? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly set up a table. Do 100,000. We're going to get this table, right? We're just going to table.insert data I. So we're just going to put 100,000 values into this table, right? That's essentially what we're doing here. We're counting 1 to 100,000, inserting the current value into the table. Now, we're going to loop through, we're going to go through each loop and see how long it takes to loop through 100,000 values. Plus, we're going to get like a generalized function, right? Local function, do loop. We'll just call it that. We're going to get the title of the loop. We're going to get the callback of the loop, right? Because we're gonna send a function essentially of the loop. Yeah. Okay. And then for this, we're gonna want to set the start time. We're just gonna use tick for this. Why not? And then the end time will of course end up being, title, time taken, tick minus start time. So essentially what this is, we're getting the updated tick after it's all done, minus the start tick, which will give us the time it took, basically, for this. You guys don't really have to worry about how this function is working. I'm just setting this up so that we can have, we can compare the speeds of each loop. But anyways, now we will just do callback. So we're calling the callback function. I believe that's all we really need, right? Because now if we just do loop pairs, we'll start with that function for, we'll need to pass the data, of course, through the function. We'll need to get the data table. For IV in pairs data, I don't want to print it. I just want to go through because printing will take even longer. And honestly, with 100,000 values, my studio will probably crash. So we're just going to do for IV in pairs data, do end, right? We're just going to loop through 1,000 indexes. And we can copy this a couple more times. And we're going to get I pairs, generalized iteration, and numeric. So I pairs, change this to I pairs. And this will end up being generalized iteration. I'll just call it generalized. And then numeric, which is for I equals 1. And for this, we're going to get the number of data. So just the amount of indexes in data. Do end. Okay, so now we have our whole thing set up. The function to do the loop, track the time, and then each loop. And actually, on top of this, just for full, fairness, we're actually going to wait 1 second in between all of these. I could actually just put this in the function. So we're waiting 1 second in between all of them so that it's just overall fair. So another loop doesn't start right after one ended, because that could cause like issues. I don't know. But now, if we test, everything should work, and we should get the speeds. So pairs time taken, I pairs, generalized, and numeric. And as you can see, this is the seconds taken, right? As you can see, they're pretty close. I mean, 0.0034 seconds, 0039, 0031, 0026, right? In fact, I can make this bigger so you guys can hopefully see better. Like, it's basically the same. And if we run it again, you know, 27, 30, 28, as you can see, there's actually a different loop now that's the quickest, and it's the pairs. Last time it was numeric, now it's pairs. And if we run again, it's probably going to be a different one again. See 3-1, 3-6, 3-1, 2-6, right? It's changing every time we test. So basically, it doesn't matter what loop you use because even if there is a difference, right? It's so minuscule. It's so small. It's such a small difference that it does not matter. Like it's basically the size of like a frame or like a couple frames. I don't. It's nothing. It's really nothing. Um, it might not even be a frame. I don't know. But either way, like it's nothing. Okay. So for the time taken, you really don't have to worry about that. But on top of that, there's also readability. So what's more readable? And for me, I mean, maybe pairs. I will say you shouldn't use numeric in general. If you're accessing stuff from the table. So like in here, if I was doing like print data I, right? You shouldn't do this. This will take longer because you're accessing the table, right? But this is just, generalized examples, right? Just seeing which loop is the fastest as is. Um, so for readability, maybe pairs, but I will say, obviously, Roblox introduced generalized iteration, so pairs and iPairs aren't needed anymore. So maybe it'd be good to use generalized iteration, especially because maybe at some point Roblox stops supporting pairs and iPairs or deprecates them or something. I don't know. Um, so either way, overall, it really doesn't matter for optimization. It should kind of just be personal choice, really. Whatever you think is most readable, whatever you like the best. Yeah. And of course, iPairs you should only use for like arrays. But that's a given. I'm just saying if you have an array, you know what's best, and anything really works. So, yeah. That's all for me, and I'll see y'all next time.